Navigating the pleasures and dangers of Tinder. So some questions I have for you to consider before I continue are, have you ever used a dating application such as Tinder before? What did you expect to gain from your interactions on the application? And what were some of the fears or mishaps you encountered while meeting people on online dating platforms? And did your gender identity contribute to this? So what is Tinder? Since its launch in 2013, Tinder has become one of the most popular dating applications globally. The application provides a fun, easy, and engaging way to meet new people and foster different types of relationships that, in the context of the article I'm examining, range from friendships to serious relationships and casual hookups. Despite the app's ability to provide a practical way for its users to create a variety of new connections, it is also portrayed as being especially dangerous for heterosexual women, who are warned to use the application with caution or to avoid engaging with it completely. Women have reported being subjected to rape, gang rape, being drugged, and some have even died through the encounters made while using the app. Authors Pantea Farvid and Kayla Aisher first addressed the underpinnings of contemporary heterosexuality, which shape women's dating and intimate experiences with men. They then introduced Tinder and its uses among heterosexual men and women, and discussed research on technologically mediated intimacies before presenting their research findings and analysis. Understandings of men and women's sexuality. Farvid and Aisher mentioned that acts of violence against heterosexual women occur both on and offline, and they are ultimately the result of gendered power relations that thrive in a patriarchal social and cultural context, and not solely from the use of dating apps. Farvid and Aisher's article also discusses the works by psychologist Wendy Holloway, who identifies 3 prevailing discourses concerning female sexuality, which are as follows. Number 1. Women are passive and lack a physical desire for sex. They are simply responsive to male sexuality. Number 2, they offer up their sexuality to men in exchange for children and the security of a home life. And number 3, a permissive discourse which states that both men and women have equal desire for sex and express their sexuality openly as long as the relations that are being had are among consenting adults. Although this discourse appears to be progressive, as stated by the authors, women continue to be judged more harshly and are commonly held responsible for any negative impact that may result from a sexual encounter. As explained by the authors, this discourse is what established widespread views on male and female heterosexuality and provide the backdrop for within which women transverse online and mobile dating. So what are people seeking? Farvid and Aisher mentioned that heterosexual women reported using online dating platforms to foster friendships or serious long-term relationships, while heterosexual men typically rely on online dating platforms to seek no-string encounters or dates with a sexual component. Farvid and Aisher's research. Due to the lack of research centered on heterosexual women's uses of dating applications, Farvid and Aisher conducted a small study in New Zealand with 5 heterosexual female participants aged between 20 to 25 years old who have used Tinder between 3 months to 2 years. The interview questions were open-ended and asked about the women's first-hand experiences engaging with men they met on Tinder. Overall, the women described Tinder as a new, contradictory, contested site that garners varied uses, benefits, and risks. Themes found in the study. The 4 themes identified from the results of the women's interviews are as follows. Tinder as a new landscape, a multi-purpose tool, a risky domain, and as a digital atmosphere that questions old norms. Tinder as a new landscape. The women described Tinder as a relatively ambiguous interface, vastly different from other forms of online communication. It was described as a quick, easy, and simple to use in comparison to more traditional forms of online dating, which they described as being more labor-intensive. Due to Tinder's simple interface and ability to be used on one's cell phone, the women considered it to be more casual and less complicated. The women described Tinder as new, cool, modern, and more geared toward young people, in contrast to older forms of online dating. Tinder granted women greater anonymity, involved fewer obligations, and offered a clean break if they were uninterested in someone who they matched with. Further, Tinder, to some extent, was described by the interviewees as being free of responsibilities and pressures. When it came to more conventional forms of dating, the women in the research project mentioned that they often felt obliged to continue speaking with the man after going on an unsuccessful first date with him, having to maintain a friendship with him, or having to encounter him in their daily lives. Whereas on Tinder, it was simple for them to cut ties with the men they were not particularly interested in. Overall, the women's interactions on the app proved to be significantly more casual compared to traditional forms of dating. So, Tinder as a multi-purpose tool. The women spoke of Tinder favorably, mentioning that it is a useful tool in a variety of ways. as it has the ability to help the women move on from past relationships while also giving them a valued short-term distraction that results in feelings of desirability, aka it provided them with an ego boost. It also offered them a platform to experiment with casual sex and other types of relationship scenarios. It provided the women with the opportunity to explore and take initiative within dating, which counteracts traditional discourses of passive and responsive femininity. The women openly described having a variety of relational and sexual desires and the purposeful pursuit of them. Tinder as a risky domain. Awareness of danger was found to be an omnipresent part of using Tinder for the women. The women in general heard warnings to always be on the lookout for any potential signs of danger and to make sure they did not put themselves in harm's way while using the app. Deception was a common risk spoken about by the women, and they spoke of being particularly deceived by someone's appearance when compared to the photos they presented on the app. The women also mentioned that at times, the reality of their encounters was much more disappointing than the fantasy created via online contact. Another risk was encountering abusive or aggressive men, particularly in response to the women's rejection. According to the interviewees, men may act as though they are entitled to have access to the women they desire and lash out in a variety of ways if their advances are rejected. The responsibility of keeping safe from men's violence is usually placed on an individual woman, rather than challenging the gendered and patriarchal power relations that produce sexuality as a fraught site for women. New technology and old norms. Although Tinder was perceived as new, the results from the study show that traditional gender norms permeated the accounts, as previously mentioned. Conclusions. Women's Tinder use needs to be understood as situated within a broader context where dating and sexual relationships are viewed as being exciting, fun, pleasurable, but also risky and dangerous. The dangers talked about by the women are not invented by Tinder or new technology, even if negotiations online may facilitate or enable such outcomes.